Alright, welcome back everybody. In this video we're going to talk about slope-intercept form of a linear equation. And this is a form that everybody should be familiar with. And we'll start by simply stating what it is. The equation of a line with slope m and y-intercept b is y equals mx plus b. So whatever the slope is going to be the x coefficient in our equation. Whatever the y-intercept is going to be added on in our equation. And the x and y are just components that show up in every one of these slope-intercept form equations. Okay, so our first example, we're going to identify the slope and y-intercept from the following equations. So for the first one, y equals negative 2x plus 5. The slope is negative 2 because that is the m value, the x coefficient, and the y-intercept is positive 5. By the way, another way to write the y-intercept, and we'll talk about this more in later lessons, it's sometimes beneficial for us to write our intercepts as points. That's the point 0, 5. All y-intercepts have an x-coordinate of 0 and a y-coordinate of whatever the y-intercept value is that we find from the equation. All right? Next example, part B, y equals x minus 4. Now notice there's no number written in front of the x, which means that there's an implied 1 in front of it. And so that's going to be our slope. And our y-intercept is going to be negative 4, or the point 0, negative 4. All right. Part C. You'll notice this is y equals mx, and then there's nothing added on the end here. So we'll talk about how we handle that in a second. First we identify the slope. It's the x coefficient. So that's going to be 2/3. And the y-intercept, since nothing's added, it's the same as adding 0. And so our y-intercept is going to be 0. Which would make the point 0, 0. And this last one's a little tricky. You may not recognize that this is in slope-intercept form, but it is. Anytime we have y equals something, it's in slope-intercept form. This is really the equation y equals, and since there are no x's, there's no x plus 5. So the slope of this line is going to be 0, and the y-intercept is going to be positive 5, or the point 0, 5. All right, so that's how we can identify slopes and y-intercepts from equations. Next, we're going to look at some examples where we write the equations with the given slope and y-intercept. So all of these are going to be of the form y equals mx plus b. So I've got y equals something x plus something. The slope is the m, so that's going to be our x coefficient. And the y-intercept is our b. It's positive 7, so we're going to write plus 7. And that's the equation with a slope of 1/2 and a y-intercept of 7. We'll do the same in part B. We take our slope. It's going to be the x coefficient, so negative 2/3 x. The y-intercept is minus 5. So we're adding a negative 5, or just subtracting 5. And that'll be our equation with those characteristics. Next, again, we're going to do y equals mx plus b. Our slope is negative 3/4, so we'll put that in as the x coefficient. Our y-intercept is 0, so this is really this, but we don't tend to write that plus 0 on the end, and so we would just write this equation as y equals negative 3/4 x. All right, and the last one, slope of 0, y-intercept of 2. Again, we're in y equals mx plus b form. The slope is going to be the x coefficient, and the y-intercept is going to be added on. But just like the last one, when we have no x's, we typically do not write 0x. We instead will just get rid of the x term from this, and the equation would be y equals 2. All right, that's the end of this video on slope-intercept form, identifying slope and the y-intercept from equations, or using the slope and the y-intercept to write an equation. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you next time.